Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you may be. My name is Marilyn. I'm the founder and CEO of Customized Training Solutions Private Limited, and we brand ourselves as Asia's most trusted customized solutions provider. Registered as an event services company in Singapore, organizing training, summits, or conferences to generate profit, cost savings, and impact towards your business. And today we will be speaking about the interconnected leader. As you know, leadership today has become, fast-paced, tech-driven workplace. So managers and heads of departments find themselves at the crossroad of strategy and execution. They are linked between top leadership and team that deliver day-to-day outcomes, but when communication falters, collaboration weakens, and technology is underutilized, the progress stalls and burnout rises. And today, it's my great pleasure to introduce to you Stephen Cutler. He is a retired special agent of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. His career includes 5 years as head of all FBI operations in the Philippines, and he is currently the chief Enterprise Risk and Compliance Officer for OmniPay, a fintech company supervised by the Bangko Sentral of Pilipinas. His duties includes risk analysis, compliance and governance, as well as data protection and privacy matters and cybersecurity matters. He reports to the board of director and senior management on these matters, as well as regular discussion with regulators and related entities. He teaches these topics at the university and in service levels. He is a level 2 certified data privacy officer, and Dr. Cutler earned his PhD in criminology. So without further so much ado, would you like to add anything to your introduction?
No, I think it's more than enough. Thank you very much. It's very generous of you. Thank you very much, Mary Lynn.
Okay, thank you. So I just want to ask you again, I've mentioned about the interconnected leaders. So why is and I've noticed from the introduction as well, you are somehow, I mean, you're a leader, a CXO, and yet you're
Yeah,
still reporting to the board member. So you're leading from the middle as well yourself.
right. That's right. That's
So
right.
why is being an interconnected leader important? And if you can define and share with us the importance.
Well, you actually raised a very good point, and one that I'd like to touch on, leading from the middle. A few years ago, we would hear about leading from the front, and it made it sound like it was a 18th century cavalry military charge with horses and so on. And the leaders, the generals, would be in the front leading their troops.
Mhm.
There's still some need for that because I think there is a need for what is called tone from the top, in which a board of directors or senior management needs to set a direction, which way we're going to go and how we're going to go about doing this. However, I think in today's world, where so many of us, whether it is the board of directors or senior management or a first year employee just coming into the company family, and trying to figure out what's going on and so on.
Mhm.
So many of us look at electronic resources, whether it's Google searches, internet searches, whether it's looking at YouTubes and videos or live stream or whatever, and we get information from a lot of different places.
Mhm.
What that brings about is what is called systemic thinking. I think used to be we would pay attention to just what my job is and only my job. That's still important, but we also have to think about how do we fit into the larger system. For example, I'm the risk and compliance officer for my company. I have to figure out not only what's going on with my company, but also how does my company fit with the entire industry, the financial services industry. We are a non-bank financial institution, but we work with banks. So how do we fit with banks? And it's a real mind change in thinking about how we do systemic thinking. And I also have to figure out, talking about interconnected leaderships, so I have to assert influence across many more different channels than I used to. In the old days, I would talk with just my CEO. These days, I use, for example, you and customized training solutions to help influence my industry and related industries. In fact, I was talking with one of the regulators just yesterday, for heaven's sakes, and one of the members of the regulatory team said, "Oh, I remember you. You spoke at such and such event." And I was like, "Oh my gosh," um, thinking that I was only speaking to, for example, new employees. And it turns out here's this regulator that knew me before we had actually met. And why is that? Because of the influence that I'm able to put out throughout the industry. I think it's also from an interconnected perspective, it's
Mhm.
important for me in the old days. Again, as a leader, I would be expected to be, kind of all knowing and all present. Not so anymore. I actually have to have empathy and an ability to understand what people that are both what I'll call above me in the hierarchy and beside and my peers on the same. I need to be able to reach them in an effective manner. And I can't do that unless I establish some kind of connection with them, which means then that I also have to be incredibly agile. And I have to be very blunt. Not everybody can excel at this because it takes work. And if you just think you're just, well, I've been given this title, I'm now an interconnected leader. Not so. You have to work at this. The agility requires you to be able to adapt rapidly, to change course rapidly when it's necessary, and at least be open to different ways of doing things. So that's where I think it's important for us as a company, in order for us to achieve profitability and an impact on our nation, our communities, our industry. That's why being an interconnected leader is so, so important these days, that I've got to know what's going on much on a much larger basis than just my own company these days.
Wow, thank you so much for bringing us through to the definition and why is it important. And some of the keywords I got from you is systemic thinking, influence, and the agility to lead. And it's really interesting when you said that it's not about just working within your organization, but also how can you extend that influence to the people or to the companies and other organizations that
That's
you
right.
work with. That's very
Yeah, that's
interesting.
right.
And so, what are the common challenges and benefits of having this in the organization? You probably mentioned some already, but if there are like specific, problems or benefits that you'd like to highlight?
Yeah, I think actually there are some challenges to this. One is that not all of us are empathetic as well as, as much as we should be. Not all of us are as agile as we should be,
Mhm.
or where it would be maximum benefit. But there are some other things, and it actually, this point that I'm about to make almost sounds like I'm going on a different path than what I did in my first comments. And the one thing is that I think we need to decide, does this interconnectedness make sense now? Or am I better served? Is my company better served by limiting the connections and actually focusing on just what is right for my company and my nation and so on? So it doesn't make sense. That's something that we all have to kind of figure out. Once it makes sense to practice the interconnected, which I like to think that it does across the board, there are some other challenges that I think we face. And one of those is language. Now, right now, you and I are speaking English, but I also know that English language as spoken in Singapore, as spoken as a second language. English is my primary language. I have to be aware that my ability to speak English as my primary language, I may speak it in different ways or with different emphases than someone who has it as a second or a third language. I need to make sure that I understand the cultures with which I'm dealing. And the cultures aren't just, oh, well, United States and this or that, or, French versus that, and so on. Often there's a culture within cultures, and I've got to understand that. Part of it is what I will call age related. And it isn't just, oh, well, millennials versus boomers versus Generation Z or whatever it is. That's only one aspect of this age issue. Uh, I've noticed that a lot of times, these very broad categories actually put people into boxes often in which they don't really fit, but we try to squeeze them into, it's like taking a pillow and putting it into a small box. You
Mhm.
might get it in there, but it's not going to be easy. And so that's something which goes back to the comment that I made earlier about empathy.
Mhm.
Do I see resistance? Do I see that there's a problem in communication? And this could be through body language, or that their comments make it look like they've missed the point of what I'm trying to say. Also, age. In some cultures, there is a deference to other age groups
Mhm.
that may hinder our communication and our ability to work together in an interconnected way.
Mhm.
Some people will expect you to take over because of your age, or the fact that I have gray hair or whatever. Also, there will be some people who will resist your leadership because they perceive themselves, maybe you're roughly the same age group chronologically, but they have what I call time in grade, which means that they've been doing the work a lot longer than you have, or even a short time longer. And so they think they know the job better than what you do.
Mhm.
And maybe they do. But it's your job as a leader then to figure out how to get these people on board with what you're trying to do and achieve your goals and objectives, or the goals and objectives of whatever task you are. There's another task that I think interconnected leaders need to do, and that is to worry about, that's too strong of a word. I shouldn't say worry about, but to address the next generation, the development of, at whatever age it might be, who's going to be leading in the future, and what can I do to set that tone to help those people in the what I call the next generation. And actually I should use plural, because next generations, to be the best leaders they can be, whether they are formal leaders or informal leaders through influence and so on. So I want to make sure that they're competent in their job, that they have the skills available, that they know what they're doing, that they communicate well so that they can get their points across, recognizing that communication is a two-way street. I listen and I learn and I speak and I teach. So how do we get that done? And that's where this agility comes in, because not everybody that is in a given Gen X, for example, or Gen Z is the same. And we're all on a spectrum of mental abilities, physical abilities, and so on. So to get a diverse group together, I have to be, as a leader, I have to be very, very agile in reaching out to all of these different people. And that's hard to do.
Thank you for that. It made me think about that, boxing people, whether it's gender, like experience, or even generation. You've mentioned about Gen Z, Gen X, and I still I don't know if this is a very hard claim that, I feel that it's not really about the like which generation you belong, but it's really about like what you've shared. It's really about influence. It's about communicating, right? It's learning not only the communication in terms of how you speak, how you listen, but also the language difference, the culture difference, and really understanding the person per se, right?
That's exactly right. That's
So,
exactly right.
so it's a very interesting concept, and I've been hearing a lot of challenge around this space as well. Uh, we've actually recently run quite a bit of sessions around multi-generational workforce, and how leaders can actually handle that, and most importantly, how can you actually like there's a lot of comments as well that the uh recent generations just want to stay as individual contributors or don't want to be in the leader position, and you've mentioned around succession planning as well, so
Yeah.
that's really something that interests me, and makes me think.
Well, and this is where I think we have um, a responsibility. I started to say obligation, and I don't like
Mhm,
that word, but a responsibility to play to the team's strengths. A lot of folks, they grew up with TikTok, they grew up with Instagram, they grew up, some of us had only YouTube for a while. Well, now looking at even what you do with customized training solutions, you offer short videos, long videos, you offer on-site sessions, you offer all sorts of different things, interactive. Some are just watch the videos and so on. But what I think the generations that are on, trying to figure out how I want to say this because I started to say something that I knew wasn't really correct. But for these leaders that we want to try to develop, how do we reach their style of leadership? Because there are a lot of people who are influencing massive, massive changes in society.
mhm,
And yet, I started to say all that they do, and that's not really correct either. But the way they do that
mhm,
is with short videos or whatever, or they do blogs and vlogs and other things. Well, that's a style of leadership. Now, how do we bring that into a corporate environment to where they can help companies and corporations and even their own corporation actually grow and make a difference in their families, in their communities,
mhm,
and in their nations? And why would they want to do that? Well, because you can actually influence millions in a very positive way, or you can influence people in a very negative way too. And we want to try to reduce the negativity
mhm,
and the positive and emphasize the positivity. So this idea of how do I reach that? Um, you know, I still need you to come into the office, or I don't need you to come into the office. We're going to do hybrid, or we're going to do purely remote, or no, I'm sorry, well, I'm not sorry. We need to have you come into the office because
mhm,
this is where the records are that you need to work with and the type of information that you work with. We can't allow it outside of the office. For example, if it's personal financial information that in a bank or something like that, no, we have to have all that information under the control of and worry about data privacy. And I
mhm,
can't have that into just everywhere we go on
mhm,
mobile devices and so on.
right.
So how do we do that? There are ways to do it, and maybe we can explore that at another broadcast sometime
Mhm.
or in another part of the program, because I think that's um, a really worthy issue that we need to talk about.
True, true. And again, this interview is just a snippet of what they can learn more at the Interconnected Summit, right? So that brings me, I mean, there's might be a lot of challenges that we can talk about here, but again, there are also a lot of benefits that you have already mentioned of being an interconnected leader. So If you can give them like probably a tip on how can leader inspire their teams to be more interconnected, and please do invite them in the upcoming summit.
Well, I'd like to invite everybody to come to the summit because I think although this is as you said, a snippet of some of the things that we'll cover, the ability to be physically present at a summit, or even if it's by Zoom or whatever channel you happen to be able to participate through. The idea is to get to know people, find out how things are done, and develop relationships with people. I often talk about it when I give a presentation someplace, get to know at least 5 new people and then maintain a relationship with those people over a period of time. And it may be just sending them an email and saying, hey, Mary Lynn, I saw this in today's news feed, or I saw a short video on this. Here's the short video, 30 seconds. What do you think about that? How do you see that working in your life? So that I can learn from somebody else's perspective. I can see what's going on. It takes work to stay interconnected, but the results are worth it. And that's where I think sitting at a table, even if it's whether it's what they call a 4-top or an 8-top table, getting to know the other people at the workshop or seminar, whatever it's called, at this presentation, I think that's going to be of great, great value. As I recall, it's at the end of August, so we've got plenty of time to get it on the calendar and to buy the tickets or to pay the registration fee, and then come planning to make connections, planning to become a multi-industry influencer, somebody that can really make an impact in tomorrow's world. And it doesn't matter whether you have stars or stripes or, whatever, or, a uniform and everything on your shoulders or on your collars. The point is, what do you do with it? And I think every one of us have an opportunity to be a leader that can make an impact.
Thank you so much again for your insights and for inviting our audience to the Interconnected Leader Summit, and looking forward to seeing all of you there.
I
Thank
look forward to
you.
seeing you also. Thank you. Thanks.